DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm your host, Chamberlain Bauder, here for another week talking hockey and lacrosse in Western New York. Big weekend coming up. It was a big weekend last weekend. Another home game for the Rochester Knighthawks. Meanwhile, a road trip for the Rochester Americans. The Amerks played last night, and it was a massive night for Zac Jones. Scored 2 of his 6 goals on the season. He's been assisting and putting himself as the second best defender in points in the AHL this season. He only scored goals in that game yesterday. They just left him wide open down the slot and were trying to cut off passing lanes, and he took his shooting opportunities and drove to the net. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Sabres at that game last night for the Philadelphia Flyers coming to town, and it was a completely dominant performance from the Buffalo Sabres from the jump. Ultimately, they scored twice on 3 shots to open that game. Got a goalie change after the first period. Just we're playing a great game of hockey. Zach Metza played on that third pair. Tyson Kozak and Peyton Krebs sharing a line. Love it for any Amerks fans. Of course, Rasmus Dahlin dominant in that game. It was awesome to watch, especially that first goal on the power, or that second goal really was even more impressive sitting behind that goal. But that first one from the power play, seeing it all the way down the ice, it was a thing of beauty. But ultimately, on the Amerks, they will head on the road for this weekend for a slate of games. So that means the Blue Cross Arena is wide open for the Rochester Knighthawks to take on the Toronto Rock on Saturday. Game time moved officially to 8 p.m. for the Bills game being played at 4:30. So hopefully you can watch that before you come in. And it will be over by then, ideally. But also going back to last weekend, what a massive weekend in Rochester. 8,546 tickets sold for that game. It's a franchise record for attendance in the new era of the Knighthawks. And to have done it on only the second game owned by the Seneca Nation with a new staff is remarkable, to be honest. It's just exactly what you could have ever hoped for as an outcome for this team right now with everything that's going on. It doesn't matter how much orange was in that arena. It was a Knighthawks ticket that they got to go in there. So that was absolutely sweet. And then the cherry on top was going 2-0 through that weekend. Just easy to have been a pessimist going into that one for anyone watching and anyone that's a fan. And Rochester didn't let us be pessimists in that one right there. But now, of course, rolling into this weekend, you've got all the guys firing on all cylinders at home, second in the league, but taking on a 2-2 squad with a lot of rookies. You know what they say about guys that are rookies? There's not a lot of tape on them. Thankfully, CJ Kurtz does have a decent amount of tape. Not a lot of it is in box, though. So it'll be an interesting matchup as the Knighthawks take on the Rock this upcoming Saturday at the Blue Cross Arena at Seeger and Shortino Field. That game time slated for 8 p.m. Big thanks to my producer, Paul Russo. And without further ado, we'll hand it over to Spencer Conley for the rest of Against the Boards.
Welcome back to your Knighthawks section of Against the Boards. Today we got a lot to go over. It was a packed weekend for the Knighthawks, 2 games. So we're going to go over the game in Philly on Friday night, the trip home to take on the Bandits that happened on Saturday, just an overall look at the weekend. Now we're going to switch our gear and head over to the game against Toronto on Saturday at home at the Blue Cross Arena. And then we're going to go over the 3 keys to the game and then take a look at Week 8 in the NLL. Coming into the game in Philadelphia, the Knighthawks were 2-1, coming off a disappointing loss in Colorado to the Mammoth the week prior. The start of this game felt like it was the same group of guys that was in Colorado. Philadelphia jumped all over the Knighthawks early on. field lacrosse star Michael Sowers was in the box this week with the Wings, and he was phenomenal. He got the scoring started in this one to make it 1-0 Philly. He ended the game with 4 goals, 3 assists, and 7 points. He had a really good game. After Sowers started it, Connor Fields answered just 47 seconds later to tie the game at 1. But unfortunately for Rochester and Riley Hutchcraft, Philadelphia went on a 4-0 run near the end of the first quarter to make it 5-1 before Thomas McConvey put one in the back of the net to make it a 5-2 game at the end of the first. Eric Fennell had a goal early on in the second to make it 6-2 Philadelphia, before Matt Gilray had a goal right on the crease, and I think that got the momentum turning for Rochester, as after that, Philly scored one, and then Rochester went on a 3-0 run that trimmed the lead down to 1. After Connor Fields made it a 7-6 game, Michael Sowers again for Philadelphia had a big one to give the Wings the 2-goal lead back with just under 2 minutes left in the half. Ryan Smith with a power play goal doing what he does best to make it a 1-goal game, and Matt Gilray with a buzzer beater from the outside at 14:59 tied the game at 8 going into halftime. After halftime, Buffalo Joe Resoteris gave the Wings a 9-8 lead. Then just over a minute later, Ryan Lanchberry with a big goal to tie it up at 9 again. Fairport, New York native Blaze Reardon gave the Wings the lead at 10-9, and then that is where Rochester took over. After the Reardon goal, right off the faceoff, Josh Medeiros with a big ground ball went down the other end and scored to tie the game at 10 apiece just 8 seconds after the Wings took the lead back. Zed Williams had a nice turnaround shot to give the Knighthawks their first lead of the game at 11:10 in the third quarter. Shortly after, though, Phil Caputo, a former Nighthawk, tied the game at 11 apiece, but that's where the fun ended for Philadelphia. Between the end of the third quarter and start of the fourth, the Knighthawks went on a 5-0 run with goals from Thomas McConvey, Ryan Smith, Jeremy Thompson got his first of the year, Connor Fields, and Ryan Lanchberry with an empty netter at 13:14 of the fourth. In the later part of this game, Josh Medeiros got tripped up, fell, and didn't return, and he would later on be ruled out for the game against the Buffalo Bandits on Saturday night. Philadelphia scored the final 2 goals of the game, one from Dustin Burkoff and the final one from Joe Resoteris with 14 seconds left. Final score, Rochester 16, Philadelphia 13, a huge win heading home to play Buffalo on Saturday night. Going into this weekend, a lot of fans, including myself, would have been perfectly fine with a 1-1 record, but the one on Friday night had to be the win. They needed to start early. They didn't do that, but they got it done in the end with a couple of good runs by the offense, and Rylan Hartley really settled in after relieving Riley Hutchcraft after he had a rough start in this one. Hutchcraft was pulled after just 17 minutes and 6 seconds of game action, 13 saves on 20 shots, 7 goals against, and then Rylan Hartley came in and put on a show for everybody. An 81.3 save percentage for Ralphie, 26 saves on 32 shots, and he played 42 minutes and 54 seconds to get the win. This game was an offensive masterclass for the Knighthawks. They put on 79 shots on goal. That is unheard of in today's NLL. Nick Demuth was standing on his head, especially in that first half. He got pulled late in the game. He played just shy of 40 minutes and had 45 saves. That just goes to show how dangerous this Nighthawks offense is when it gets going, like it did in Philadelphia. This weekend, we saw the NLL debut for Nathan Kapp at the Faceoff X. He was really good against Philadelphia, 50%, and those extra possessions really helped the Nighthawks get a win in Philly. And with Nathan Kapp taking the faceoffs, that has taken the pressure off of Jeremy Thompson. Thompson really showed this weekend why he is a top-level defender in the NLL. Even added in a goal and an assist against the Wings. He had a big transition goal that really sealed the deal for the Nighthawks there in the fourth quarter. Now we will move on to Saturday night. It was a packed house at Seager and Shortino Field at the Blue Cross Arena. This is the first time the Nighthawks have been able to take on the Buffalo Bandits since the Pagulas sold the team to the Seneca Nation. Buffalo started the game early with a power play goal after Zed Williams was called for a penalty just 3 seconds into the game off the opening faceoff. But after the opening whistle and that opening goal for Buffalo, it was all Nighthawks the rest of the way. The final lead Buffalo had this game was 2-1 just 6 minutes and 13 seconds into the game. And then after that, the Nighthawks had the lead the entire game. The first quarter was capped off by a Zed Williams first quarter natural hat trick. This is the Zed Williams the Nighthawks need all year long. He's starting to get healthy with the Achilles injury behind him, and he is going to be key for this Nighthawks team going forward. When the Nighthawks traded for him in the offseason, everybody knew it was going to be a big deal, especially when a team like Buffalo comes to town when you need some of that secondary scoring, and he provided just that when they needed it. Performance like this makes me feel like Matt Vince has nightmares about Zed Williams in his sleep. Zed Williams dominated the 2022 NLL Finals with the Colorado Mammoth, had an incredible Game 3 that won the Mammoth the championship in 2022. Thomas McConvey is starting to turn into a superstar, a 3-goal, 4-assist performance, 7-point night. He was massive for the Nighthawks in this game. He had the only goal in the third quarter of this game. Fourth quarter started early for Rochester. 24 seconds in, Ryan Smith from the point had a beautiful shot that got past Matt Vince, making a 9-5 lead for Rochester. But then Buffalo found a way to get back in the game in just under a minute. Kyle Buchanan, who had 4 on the night, and Tahoga Nanticoke had 2 goals for Buffalo to trim the lead down to 9-7. 4 minutes later, Thomas McConvey with a huge goal to get it back to a 3-goal game. And while we're talking about Thomas McConvey, we'll mention a minute 19 later, he scored again to make it a 11-7 lead for Rochester. Buffalo got the next 2 from Kyle Buchanan and Josh Byrne. And with a minute 7 left, Connor Fields scored the dagger. A huge goal for the guy who was unprotected by the Buffalo Bandits, a signature moment in his young career. Rylan Hartley was an absolute animal again in this game. 42 saves on 51 shots, and the massive part about all of this, he only allowed 4 goals combined from Dane Smith, Josh Byrne, Ian McKay, and Tahoga Nanticoke, who combined for 37 shots on goal. It was a massive performance by number 49, and the Nighthawks are going to need that as the season goes on. It was a massive bounce-back weekend for the Nighthawks. They struggled in Colorado, but they turned the page and got back-to-back huge, ginormous, you can't even talk about how big it was to get these wins for Rochester. Gonna give a little love to Adam Thistlewaite. He has really stood out to me so far in the young season. The second-round pick from the University of Albany has been a bright spot on that Rochester defense. Another thing I don't want to forget to say, a lot of Buffalo fans on Twitter making noise saying, oh, they lost because they didn't have Zach Belter and Mitch DeSnew. The Bandits lost because they got dominated. The Knighthawks were without 3 defensemen and their captain Dan Coates, Ryland Reese, and Josh Medeiros. The way the Knighthawks shut down the dynamic duo of Josh Byrne and Dane Smith is why Rochester had success in this game. The Knighthawks also held the Bandits scoreless for 20 minutes and 35 seconds. Another reason why Rylan Hartley was unbelievable in this game, and they need him to keep that going forward. Now with the weekend behind them, they have to look forward to this Saturday coming up against the Toronto Rock. This game will be at Blue Cross Arena, 8 p.m. start. And this is a very young and hungry Toronto Rock team coming in. The number 1 overall pick, sensation, C.J. Kirst, has 19 points through his first 4 career NLL games. Toronto is coming off a 12-7 win in San Diego last Friday night. The Rock are 2-2 on the season. Lost the opener to Oshawa. Bounced back with a 11-10 win against Calgary at home. And then they got demolished by the Las Vegas Desert Dogs 17-11 before finally getting back in the win column against San Diego. Next, we're going to go over the 3 keys to the game against the Toronto Rock. First one, get Rosie moving early. Nick Rose is one of the best goalies in the NLL. Don't let him get any type of momentum. Get a couple early ones. Get Ryan Smith involved. Get Thomas McConvey involved. Get the whole offense going early. Next one is going to be the face-off X. Toronto has been without Victor, New York native T.D. Erlin for the start of the year. I don't anticipate him coming back for this game. Toronto has had 6 different guys taking face-offs so far this year. Get Nathan Kapp early and often at the X. If Rochester can steal a good amount of those extra possessions, they will be just fine on Saturday. Final key is the guy we mentioned earlier, C.J. Kirst. He has been an absolute unit for the Toronto Rock early on this season. I would anticipate the Knighthawks playing him like they played Josh Byrne and Dane Smith last Saturday. And now for the final segment, we are going to go over Week 8 in the NLL. Friday night, we have Lacrosse in Halifax. Colorado Mammoth going to Halifax to take on the Thunderbirds. Really looking forward to the goalie matchup between Dylan Ward and Warren Hill. And the second of 4 Friday night games is between the Ottawa Black Bears and the Buffalo Bandits in downtown Buffalo. Ottawa has been one of the surprises of the NLL so far this season. It'll be interesting to see how going to Buffalo will affect them. And for Buffalo, how will they come back after a disappointing loss in Rochester last weekend? Next game, the Calgary Roughnecks taking on the Georgia Swarm. It's considered a Georgia Swarm home game, but this game is part of the NLL Unboxed series that will be taking place in Edmonton. Hopefully it's a packed house there at Rogers Place, and it'll be good for the NLL to expose potentially some new and old fans, as the Saskatchewan Rush were the old team in Edmonton before they moved to Saskatoon. Final Friday night game is between the San Diego Seals and the Vancouver Warriors. This game will be at Rogers Arena in downtown Vancouver. Don't really know what to expect in this one. All I do know is that Vancouver should be able to get the win. They had a rough week against Calgary, winning the game in overtime against a team that, in my opinion, is nowhere near as talented as the Vancouver Warriors. I think Vancouver's going to bounce back in this one and get a win at home. Other than the Knighthawks and Rock game on Saturday, we have two more. The first one is Oshawa Firewolves at the Saskatchewan Rush. I expect this one to be all Saskatchewan. Frank Chiliano between the pipes for the Rush again. He has been phenomenal this year. Something to keep an eye on is Oshawa is coming off a gigantic win against the Halifax Thunderbirds, a game that got very physical and very chippy late in that one. So that'll be something to keep an eye on when it comes to Oshawa. Final game of the weekend will be the Philadelphia Wings taking on the Las Vegas Desert Dogs. It's been a rough last few games for Landon Kells for Vegas in that it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts against a potent Philadelphia offense that the Knighthawks saw last Friday. Let's hope the Blue Cross Arena is bouncing again this Saturday night. The Knighthawks will be taking on the Toronto Rock at 8 p.m. at Seager and Shortino Field at the Blue Cross Arena. Thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of Against the Boards.